everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Practice Pulse podcast. I am your host, Dr. Aditi Agarwal, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Rebecca Herring. Hi, Rebecca. How are you this
Hello.
afternoon?
Good. So good to be here. And I'm grateful to be a guest on your podcast today.
Thank you. Well, Rebecca, with over 25 years of experience, she specializes in coaching dental teams to align roles with their passions, fostering trust, communication, and operational efficiency to deliver exceptional patient care. In pioneering in integrating virtual assistants for dental practices, she reduces burnout, optimizes workflows, and enhances patient experiences through innovative offshore support strategies. As Vice President of the DPLN in Denver and a lifetime ADOM member, Rebecca holds fellowship and mastership credentials, co-hosts the Dental Decoders podcast, and is on track for the diplomate status in 2025. Woohoo! Wow, welcome, welcome. That's a lot.
We all like to be super busy, right? If we aren't, we don't feel like we're doing what we should be.
Right, that's so true. Well, tell me about your journey. 25 years is a long time.
Yeah,
Share with us how you began.
you bet. Yeah. Honestly, I think it started from birth. My dad was a dentist, so we all kind of got born into it, I guess. But my dad and we have very similar personalities and are very driven to taking care of people and serving our communities. So not surprising that here I am years later and coaching dentists and their teams to help solve some problems that are more today than they were back when I was lots younger. So I really do love stepping in and working with the teams. I'm very much what I like to call a boots on the ground coach. I really love being in the practices. I want to see what's going on. It's a lot harder to do that from, I think, 10,000 feet, which is how I kind of explain the difference. But I want to be there. I want to see what's happening and let's kind of think outside the box a little bit, which is where some of those virtual assistant ideas come from, to help us find solutions to some of these hurdles that we find ourselves hitting inside our dental practices.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a novice way of thinking to be able to help dentists run their practices with still, even with all the staffing challenges that we are facing, and especially since COVID. And
Mm.
what kind of catapulted you into, finding these solutions, and leaning on virtual assistants to help?
Yeah, honestly, we hit the hurdle in the last practice that I was working in. So I was their chief operating officer for a dental company here in Colorado. And we hit a lot of the same hurdles that dental practices are finding themselves in today. And it wasn't as common back then, but being over the operations, we just couldn't find enough staff. We had multiple practices, we had multiple locations. And so the doctors and I just sat down and we just started kind of brainstorming with ideas and what can we do. The virtual assistants aren't meant to replace staff or their positions, but they're meant to support them in ways that they can, because they're not in the office, but your team members are. And we want to allow them to give them the patient experience that we all talk about, that we want our patients to have. And so since they're in the practice, we want them to give that experience to your patients. And by allowing those virtual assistants to step in and take over some of those responsibilities and take them off the shoulders of our team members that are in the practice, we're allowing them to take care of the patients and allow the virtual assistants to support them in their roles and do some of those things that, they don't have to necessarily be in the practice to do, but still continue to help your practice grow and meet the needs of the practice. So we had this same problem, like I said, like everybody else. And so we ended up just due to circumstance, not necessarily the way that I suggest people do it, but we didn't have any team members at our front desk in office. So we hired a handful of virtual assistants, brought them on board, and they created essentially our hub, probably because I'm not a real fan of call centers. So they created our central hub for our locations, and it started from there. And we did onboarding and training and implementing. I worked with so many different strategies and ideas and how to utilize them the most effective way for our practice. And ultimately, in a nutshell, without going into a huge lengthy story, that training by myself, we created protocols and SOPs that they would follow and manage for our team and for our offices. And the first full year that they were with our practice, they doubled production in all of our locations. They were able to reduce our open chair time by 80%. And we reduced all of our outstanding insurance claims and patient owing under 60 days. So for us, it was just a great system. It was a great protocol. And I loved working with them. So when I decided to leave my practice and open up my own coaching business, this became one of the niches that I offered as part of my coaching.
That's awesome. And in your experience, how has it been? How has it been widely accepted in the coaching program now that you've been bringing in the VAs to various offices? How has that been in terms of acceptance? Both, I'm sure the doctor's not that hard, but the team members.
Honestly, the doctors aren't hard. You're right. They love it, not only because it's cost effective for the practice, but they're also very on board because they watch the stress and the strain that they know that they're putting on their team members in the office. And they want to find a way to take some of that stress off of them. They don't want to lose their team members because they have so much to do and not enough time. And they don't like to see them doing some of those redundant things that, like insurance verification, right? Some of those kinds of things, and entering it into the PMS system. It's just very time consuming, right? We don't want our team members in the practice to be sitting on hold with the insurance company for 30 minutes to an hour, right? We don't want them to do that. We want them to be engaging with our patients, having great conversations. We want them in that consult room or in the treatment room and selling and closing the treatment plans that the doctor just got done talking to the patient about. Those are things our VAs can't physically do in the practice, but they're just as important as that insurance eligibility. And those breakdowns being in the computer, that's the foundation that has to be right in order for those treatment plans to be correct, right? So teaming up with a virtual assistant to help you with different aspects of your practice can be a win-win-win, really, for everybody. So a lot of times, once you have that conversation with the doctor, the office manager, and talk about how it actually would work, which I have these conversations all day, every day, and I love it because you hear this relief almost that comes over the office manager, right? Because they feel like everything falls back on them ultimately, and they want it all done, right? As leaders and managers in our practice, that's all we want, right? We want this to be successful. We want this to be a win. We want our doctors to be happy. We want to see our schedules full. We don't want to see cancellations. We want all the things to be perfect and flow, and they can. And it all comes down to bringing in these virtual assistants and training them to do what you want them to do. They're employees. You hire them just like you do any other employee, and they work for your practice, for your team, for your doctor, and they're just as dedicated, if not more. And they really want to make you happy. And honestly, every virtual assistant I think that I have placed in practices for the last however many years it's been, they're still there. Wow. They're still there. I check back often because I want to know. And even my practice that I started with these virtual assistants, I called the other day because it was their birthdays for one of them. So I called the practice and I actually got her on the phone and I got to wish her happy birthday. So they're still there. They're dedicated. They want these jobs. and they work really hard for you.
Wow. Well, you've been calling these virtual assistants secret sauce, right? For getting critical critical
They're your
tasks
secret
done.
sauce. They're your secret weapon in the back office. It's kind of what I refer to them as. But yeah,
But
it can
can
be.
you walk us through that? Then how do they help with things like insurance verifications, managing schedules? How do they do it?
Yeah. So sometimes it's about a conversation with the practice, because for every practice, it means something else, right? It means something different for everyone. Sometimes it's just help us with our phones, right? Help me with my phone, help answer the questions, help get our patients scheduled. Sometimes for the practice, it does mean the insurance side, because it is the most time consuming thing that the practice needs to do. We're coming up on a new year, and that
Mhm.
means eligibility breakdowns, the full breakdown again, putting it into your PMS system, making sure it's right, checking back with every patient. Has your insurance changed? Anything different? Resetting all of their benefits again at the first of the year. There's a lot to do at the beginning of the year.
Mm.
So that's another thing that they can do. Another idea that we implemented with our practice, years ago, was we found that, the new patients would come in and they would generally do their cleanings, of course. That's always the most important thing to them. And then somehow they kind of fell off the wayside.
Mm.
And so we started utilizing our virtual assistants to reach out. Each one were kind of assigned a different lane, right? I kind of gave a lane to everybody to stay in, and they owned it, and they owned it really well.
Mm.
But we had one that was in charge of following up on our new patients.
Mm.
Did they come back? Did they get
Mhm.
scheduled for their 6-month or 3 or 4-month recall, depending on what we needed to do for them? Did they get their treatment scheduled? Did they come back? So it was a great follow-up with our new patients, particularly.
Mhm.
We had another one that was very focused on our recare. So making sure that our patients were coming back for their next cleanings and staying in that routine. And then another one stayed very, depending on the office, of course, because we had several locations, staying up on the doctor's treatment schedules too. So making sure that, hey, they'd reach out to the patient. Hey, John, Dr. Smith and I were talking the other day. We were reviewing your treatment plan, and we realized, it's been 6 months, it's been a year since we've seen you. They're all working in tandem, right? So they have notes that they've already reached out about the cleaning. I see that Sally reached out to you already about your cleaning, but we do, Dr. Smith and I talked about your treatment. It's been a year. You did diagnose that crown on the upper right. He asked me to reach out to you and make sure you're doing okay, that you're not experiencing any pain, that type of thing, right? We want to encourage them to come back. We create that sense of urgency with the patient. Let's get you back in for that cleaning. Dr. Smith would like to reevaluate that area, make sure we're not having any more problems. Are you experiencing any pain? La-di-da. So we've had that conversation with that patient. I mean, that's your patient experience as well, not only in the practice, right, when they come in, but also that experience on the phone. Like, dang, Dr. Smith looked at my treatment plan again. Shoot, I was hoping he'd just forget about me, right? That I could just fall into the wayside, and a couple years from now, I could just go back and have my next cleaning.
Right.
Patients feel very valued when someone reaches out and said, the doctor asked me to call you. The doctor and I were talking about your treatment plan, and realized it's been 6 months, it's been 8 months, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, right? Since you've been in, we want to make sure you're doing okay. Are you experiencing any pain or discomfort in that area? Oh, so glad you're not. We would hate for that to turn into something bigger, right? Root canal,
Right.
ding, ding.
Right.
Right. However you like to approach your patients, but that's how you work with those virtual assistants. They have the time.
Mhm.
They're not being interrupted by patients coming and going and demands of someone coming and grabbing them. Can you come back and do a quick perio chart for me? Or, whatever it may be, right?
Right. Right.
They have the dedicated time, and your patients love it. When they
Mhm.
have time to talk to somebody, I just didn't quite understand what did he mean by bone grafting, right?
Mhm.
Like, I wasn't quite sure. I was kind of embarrassed to ask, but now that you're on the phone, can we talk about that? Like, what does that mean? those virtual assistants can give them the explanation. They can talk to them. They can talk to them about third-party financing. But that trust that they build with your patients again and again really establishes them to the practice and gives them that stickiness. Like, I want to come back because that virtual assistant, Sarah, that I talked to on the phone, she was so nice. And I can't wait to go back and talk to her again. Or, I really want to go back and schedule because I thought that was so nice that Dr. Smith really wanted to know how I was doing. So we create
so it's definitely a practice builder.
Yeah.
How would we get started with VAs? Say somebody wanted to bring on a virtual assistant, which can be kind of overwhelming, right? But what advice would you give us to make the onboarding as seamless as possible?
As seamless as possible. I always recommend that, and I offer this to anybody who wants it. They can always jump on my calendar. I'm always happy to have a conversation because I find that a lot of them, they always have questions, right? Like, here's what my situation is in my practice. What would they do? How can they help us, right? And there's always that question. And I think it's good to talk to somebody first. And like I said, I love talking to people. I'm so passionate about the virtual assistant experience, and the transition can be super smooth. But I think sometimes for the office, it's about, I don't know what to have them do. I don't know what to give them, right? Or I don't really want them to answer the phones because I really want my in-office staff to do that. But what can they do for me? That's why my list is incredibly long. There's so many things that they can help your practice with. And that's where I really do like to engage in a conversation so that they feel like they can ask all the questions that they want to understand the benefits to their practice. From there, I like to connect them with, I have a company that I absolutely adore working with. I think they, along with the training and all those types of things that we can help them with, make that transition as smooth as it possibly can be. And the company is Reach. And so a lot of times, once I'm done speaking with someone who's interested, I'll do an introduction over to my contact at Reach. They're used to helping my clients and my customers that I've worked with and had conversations with already, to give them that really smooth introduction. But basically how it works is we're going to connect you to whoever you want to work with, right, for your virtual assistants. I just really enjoy Reach. But you're going to be set up to have interviews. So you're going to be receiving, a video. You're going to get their resume. You'll be able to speak with them. You'll do an interview, be able to ask them any questions you want to. I think this is important because I think the question that people always seem to ask is, do they speak English, right? Of course, they speak English, and they might have a little bit of an accent, but and people always say, well, how do I get around that? And we're not going to get around it. If you call someone in New York, someone in Chicago, someone in the Bronx, someone in the Deep South, we all have a little bit of an accent, right?
Yeah.
I think it's natural. And I like to tell offices, just roll with it. I tell the virtual assistants, yes, you have an accent. Where are you from? Yes, I do. Thank you for noticing. I'm from Zimbabwe, or I'm from El Salvador, and I'm so excited to be a part of Dr. Smith's team. How can I help you today? Right? We want to say it. We want to address it. It's natural. I mean, any part of the United States, you can kind of pick up on an accent somewhere. So, but you're going to be able to talk to them. You're going to be able to interview them. You'll choose the ones that you want to hire. One of the great benefits of working with virtual assistants, of course, is that there's no unemployment, there's no Social Security, there's no taxes, those types of things. You just pay the bill to the company in which you've hired your virtual assistants from. And they take care of all the taxes and such, because it is a foreign country that they're being hired from. And some of that gets a little different than what we have in the United States. So the company takes care of that for you.
And you work with one company or a few different companies that they get to pick and choose from?
Well, they can choose their virtual assistant from anywhere that they want to. There's lots of companies out there. I just have a few that because I've been doing this for so long, I've just worked closely enough with that I know the few that I probably trust the most, and I know what their process is. And the thing that I really love the most is that there's really good follow through after they're hired. When we got ours years ago, we didn't have reach, but the company we went through was, here's your virtual assistants and good luck. And there was nothing afterwards, right? So if we ran into a problem, or I needed assistance in trying to figure out how to do this training, right, all brand new to me, I didn't have someone to reach out to. And I think that's what I appreciate about companies that offer that, because it's important. This is totally new. It's all virtual, right? And so sometimes the training of your virtual assistants, you have to kind of think a little differently in how you would train them. But the cost savings to the practice is great. It's such a relief to the doctor. You can basically hire 2 virtual assistants for the cost of one in your office. They aren't meant to replace anyone, right? But it's so nice to know you have some extra help to work with your in-office team to get more done, right? That secret ingredient, that secret sauce in the back office that we talked about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, can see how phenomenally important this would be, and how it would beneficial rather it would be for having a supplemental team member that you can lean on as a front office team member with the phone ringing, with somebody checking in, with somebody checking out, with insurance questions, with treatment plan questions. It's just like the list of questions is endless. And now with all the communications, the front office has to keep on top of messages coming through text, coming through email. And they're always pulled in so many different directions that many times, I know, especially for busier offices, the front office is like, oh, I don't know. Did I get back to that person? Did I answer this one? I don't remember. And they can't, because they've got like really a million balls in the air. And so I think having this extra pair of hands, or mouths, so to speak, would be
Yeah. Depending, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would
It,
be
it
so.
really is nice for them. And it can be such a relief. I'll tell you the flip side to this, and like I'll use the example for us, was the year that we hired them. I'm in Colorado, and so for us, we had a huge snowstorm. We got hit with like 18 inches of snow. And so, of course, we couldn't get into the practice, and the doctors didn't want anyone trying to get in. And it was literally a simple message to our virtual assistants, who, of course, they're in sunny weather, so they're fine. And they were able to reach out to all of our patients really quickly and say, hey, just want to let you know the office isn't open today. Obviously, we don't want you to try to come in. Doctor would like you to please be safe, but we were more than happy to get you rescheduled. Our business kept going. They reached out to patients who obviously were all home, and they took their focus at that point and focused on working the schedule, keeping it full, getting people rescheduled. And when you think about it from that aspect, it's fantastic. I mean, you're already paying them to be there, just like you are your staff that's in office. And it was such a relief to those of us that didn't have to worry about coming into the practice, knowing that the practice was still moving, right? They still were able to talk to our patients, get them rescheduled, that answer the phone for patients that might have been calling in saying, I can't come in today, or, whatever. They kept the business moving. And that was such a relief to us as a business.
Gotcha. And, I know that this is really, really important, because there are a lot of teams and dentists that are suffering from burnout, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
how can these virtual assistants, they ease the workload, of course, but how can they help teams, really stay focused on providing exceptional patient care?
Well, one thing that I think is really great is that the virtual assistants can work really any hour, right?
I see.
So because their hours are going to be different than the office's hours, they're willing to work really any time. So they'll always match the office's hours. But for some practices, and for the doctor, right, to help them too, because we know that they leave the office, but they're not off work, right? They're constantly still working and thinking about patients. So I know a couple of specialty practices that I've worked with that had their virtual assistant that stayed until 7, 8, sometimes 9 o'clock at night to help with some of those after hour phone calls from those that may have had surgery done that day, might have had wisdom teeth extractions, and they just want to, they call in, they're still hurting. The virtual assistant is able to get the information that the doctor may need to figure out if it's just, my face is still swollen. Okay, have you done, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Helps to facilitate that emergency phone call, get the information over to the doctor, who then can determine whether he needs to actually call the patient back, so on and so forth. They also, virtual assistants can start super early in the morning. So if you're on, on different time zone, and those insurance companies are, they open early in the morning. Sometimes having the virtual assistant, they can start earlier than your practice, and they can get on the phone first, right, to those insurance companies and, work those insurance questions, billing questions. They can send your claims in for you. They can do attachments. They can follow up on denials. There's so many things that they can do. There's just so many ways that they can alleviate stress. I know that I've worked with several dentists who have actually hired their own virtual assistant to be their executive assistant for just them. And that helps to alleviate a lot of the pressure for the dentist as well.
Wow, that's really impactful. You offer on-site training to help practices, right? Work effectively with the virtual assistant.
I do.
And then can you share how this hands-on approach really makes a difference and sets practices up for success?
Well, when you think about it, right, a lot of practices want to bring on this help because one, they're either short-staffed, right, or their staff is already spread so thin. So a lot of questions I get asked is, well, I would love one, right? I'd love 3. I'd love to bring 3 in and help each one of my team members at the front have basically their own assistant, right? But they're like, how do I give someone up in my practice to train the virtual assistant to get them up to speed? And it's a great question, right? How do I do that? Right? I'm already short-staffed and my team's already burnt out. How do I put this on them and ask them to do all this for me, right? So yes, part of my coaching is that I will, once you get your virtual assistant from wherever you want to get them, when you have them scheduled to start in your practice as part of my coaching, I will come in on site to the practice and spend 3, 4, 5 days, whatever, depending on how many virtual assistants you're bringing on board. And I will help train them on site with your PMS system, with any platforms you use, dental intelligence, your phones, whatever it may be, to help train the virtual assistant for that first week, because that first week of onboarding feels like the longest and the hardest. So having someone come in like myself, who's got that experience in the background and the knowledge to facilitate that first week with them, for practices feels like they can breathe. Like, okay, that feels good. I can do that. And then from there, the team can keep going. And so part of that is sending them a packet of information that they help to facilitate that first week of training.
Gotcha. Wow, this is so empowering. I mean, what you're doing is really phenomenal. And, I think we all could use the help, definitely. Because, like I said, it's really hard for team members, especially these days with the difficulty of getting experienced team members. Sometimes it becomes even more challenging because now you have the doctor and the back office team, or even just an office manager trying to teach on-site team members and trying to go through training there. And so it becomes a lot for one person to handle.
Well, and when you
Sometimes.
think about it, when you're trying to find in-office support, right? You have basically a 50-mile radius maybe from your practice.
Mhm.
And by considering working with virtual team members, you've got an endless mile radius, as we can help you find support with people that, are pretty much anywhere, and willing to work for you, with whatever you need. What I love is that they're going to give you a 40-hour work week,
Mhm.
no matter what. So if your office, let's say isn't open on Friday, your virtual assistant can still be there. They can answer the phones and take care of emails and schedule and confirm and do all those things. Your business is still moving. And,
Mhm.
for a lot of us, that's what's most important, is that we just need things to keep moving and scheduling and keeping,
Right.
business flowing. And even though the office isn't open, and, that's what it's all about, is we need to keep our businesses growing and producing
And flowing.
and all those things. And that's what those virtual assistants can do, is to facilitate your team that's on site and the doctor. And like I said, that secret weapon in your back office, and help you out as best they can.
Right. Well, if our listeners want to reach out to you and learn more about, how to get started with VAs and what are we talked about the good, but maybe you can also explain if there are any downsides to it. And, but how can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can find me in all the social media platforms at Transformational Dental Coaching. My email is Rebecca, REBECCA, at yourtdcoach.com. And I have my website, which is also yourtdcoach.com.
Wow, that's awesome. I can't wait for our listeners to listen to this episode because it is really, I think, really beneficial with what you guys are facilitating, especially in this day and time of where dentistry is heading. And this is so beneficial not only for just a single practice owner, but also for people with multiple practices. It makes a huge difference to be able to lean on team members, even say, like you said, when your office is closed, so that things keep moving. So, and that reduces having to pull front office people from X, Y, and Z and reduces burnout. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming on.